The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And first, let me say right off the top that I hate following him as a speaker. You won't hear me use the word monastic. But it's an absolute joy to rise today as Leader of the Opposition and as a proud Conservative with all of us here today to pay tribute to our very good friend and longtime colleague, the member for Calgary-Minnepoor. Now, it's no exaggeration to say that he is regarded by all of us on this side of the House as an elder and a mentor, although he is still pretty young. Yeah. But he has 7 years on me as an MP. But that goes without saying, Mr. Speaker, that he's much older than I am. But when you think back 2 decades, it boggles the mind the things that he has seen in his career. He remembers an upstart young MP named Bob Rae joining this House, rescued from the downtrodden Ontario NDP. He remembers the time when you'd have better luck finding Franklin ships in Alberta than a Liberal MP. But don't worry, we'll fix that. And of course, Mr. Speaker, he, along with the member for Battleford's Lloydminster and the member for Calgary Forest Lawn, were the very first boys in short pants, way back in 1997. Wow. I'm sure they were trying to catch on to the boy band craze in the late 90s, Mr. Speaker. But nearly 20 years later, and the member for Calgary-Minnepoor has probably seen it all. And with a career like his, it's difficult to know where to start. But perhaps I'll start with what many Canadians already know about him, his unending energy and commitment to Canada's newcomers. During the 2011 election, the member for Calgary-Minnepoor became well known to homes around the country as the outreach minister, always being present in communities that were often an afterthought during elections. Même aujourd'hui, peu de membres de la vie publique canadienne.
People in Canada understand the historic forces that forged our cultural communities in Canada, from the diaspora to what the Canadian government did to correct injustices of the past. Often, they worked so hard and constantly.
In Canadian public life, who have a better sense of the historic forces that have shaped Canada's cultural communities, from our diaspora peoples to the Canadian government's acknowledgement of the terrible past injustices. He has often been the loudest voice and the most constant champion. Yet whether those at home knew it or not, that reputation was not lightly earned. His reputation for hard work and late hours helped him earn the distinction of being Canada's longest-serving immigration minister. And it was under his leadership on the file, more new Canadians were permitted to join the Canadian family than under any Minister of Immigration before him. Both those who needed Canada's protection and those who were concerned about widespread abuse, his leadership was the overdue correction the country had been waiting for. Much-needed reforms shrank backlogs and refugee claimant processing times from years to weeks. And as a result, those legitimate refugees who needed Canada's help the most received it faster. And those abusing the system were turned away or discouraged from targeting Canada in the first place. He launched the first refugee settlement program directed at bringing to Canada persecuted gays and lesbians, particularly those from Iran and the Middle East. He ensured that refugees who had nowhere else to turn knew Canada was a welcoming place. In short, it was a generational shift in the efficiency and operation of Canada's immigration program, and thousands of new citizens will remember and thank him for it. Now, as I say, Mr. Speaker, that was the work behind the scenes. In his interactions with new Canadians, though, he is as warm and as welcoming as the locals. The ease with which he fits into a room led him to earn the nickname the Smiling Buddha from Chinese Canadians. Now, his colleagues never dared to try that one on him, Mr. Speaker, but he is leaving, so okay now. Though I'm told once that on a walk around in China, Prime Minister Harper, seeing a large statue of a grinning Buddha, pointed at it and deadpan said, "I see Jason Kenney is as popular here as he is in Canada." He brought this same unmatched work ethic along with him to the role of Minister for Economic and Social Development. What we most admired was his advocacy for students and young workers in the skilled trades, which I believe will prove prophetic as we continue to fight for good jobs, and especially jobs that cannot be outsourced for the next generation. And as Canada's Minister of Defence, the member for Calgary-Minnepoor carried the banner for our armed forces proudly, and and especially when our allies needed Canada's assistance. Only a few months into his tenure, Canadian troops were sent to Ukraine as part of an effort to improve the military police presence, training, and resources available to our allies. And the member for Calgary-Minipur also took over his predecessor, the lead on Operation Impact, Canada's use of airstrikes against the ISIS threat in Iraq and Syria. It was a job that demanded clear eyes and clear authority, which he delivered. And here in Parliament, I think we could all agree, including members opposite, that the member for Calgary-Minipur never arrived without a keen interest and a deep knowledge of the subjects that drove him.
For example, we all know how proud he is of the role that he played in the founding of the Freedom of Religion Office, an institution that the previous government considered critical for the protection of those who are always persecuted for their beliefs.
How proud he is of his role in the founding of the former Office of Religious Freedoms, an institution the previous government viewed as a critical tool for the protection and support of those still persecuted for their beliefs around the world. His defense of the Office of Religious Freedoms in the House earlier this spring was partly oratory and partly a history lecture, which usually is when he speaks, calling upon such figures as John Diefenbaker, Pope John Paul II, Pakistan's Minister of Minority Affairs, and Parsi Zoroastrians. And I'm not sure who that is. The last one. It was one of his quintessential performances that we have come to know and love, knowledgeable, passionate, and forceful. And that's always been his approach. As a parliamentarian, he's been a model of rigor and determination. And for all of that, he's been honored by his peers in this place and elected as the hardest working parliamentarian, the most knowledgeable parliamentarian, and at another point, the best overall member of parliament. And I'm probably accolades also include the Moral Courage Award from United Nations Watch for his advocacy for victims of tyranny, particularly in Iran and Syria, and recently the Order of Merit from President Poroshenko of Ukraine for his staunch defense of Ukraine's sovereignty. Now, Mr. Speaker, if I was a more daring person, I might even suggest the member for Calgary-Minipur learned how to be the best overall MP at the knee of our friend, the current Liberal Minister of Public Safety, for whom he once served as an aide in his early career.
That's right.
So if my colleagues on the other side of the House might roll their eyes while I heap praise on a Conservative, they can thank the Liberal Minister of Public Safety for helping him put him here in the first place. Mr. Speaker, as an Albertan, I know well the kind of devotion that Albertans can inspire in their public officials. And in return for his hard work, they sent him back to Ottawa 7 times, often with historic margins of victory. In fact, he always used to like to tease Mr. Harper about his margins of victory being bigger than his. Clearly, my friend from Calgary-Minipur was also very brave. Mr. Speaker, we've always valued his advice. I've always valued his advice, and I know others here will say the same. C'est un ami de nous tous.
He's a friend to all of us on this side of the House. He has dealt with all kinds of problems, but he also has a sense of great friendship.
Side of the House, he has a streak of Irish stubbornness in him, as he should. Really? We've never seen that before, Mr. Speaker. But also that Irish sense of friendship and an infectious laugh that we will all miss echoing through this chamber. Many who have passed through his office in these last 2 decades see him as a friend, a role model, a mentor, and a loyal friend. But luckily, for all of us, his time in public life is just starting a new chapter as he enters the rough and tumble world of Alberta provincial politics. I know we wish him luck and good health in that pursuit. We hope he finds some time to keep up his reading. And it's my honor to thank him on behalf of our entire caucus, including members past and present. He's not dying, Mr. Speaker. He's just going to Alberta. for his work in the Conservative cause for all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.